welcome to Stump the Chump. Woohoo! All right, our first question is from Tammy Helling over at Federal Foam. They're going to be adding tooling tracking to their system. At one location, they have tools in the BOM and attached to the correct operation. Not a complex project, just interested in what has worked well for other people. They're trying to decide if they should keep them there or move them to their own files. Some of the features we need are there, such as location and ability to get production and scrap numbers easily. We also have maintenance module, and we'll have that in place. It'd be nice to have them out of the part file and would not take that much to do it. So the features that she's looking for are like location tracking, tool life production, scrap, what parts shipped, preventative maintenance using production numbers, and dispatch list. I'll see if Tammy's still here so I could unmute her if she is. Tammy, there you are. You are unmuted, Tammy, if you want to add anything in. Otherwise, fellow chumpies, Tim, you think you're still muted? Let me find out. Nope, you're unmuted, Tim. You should be good.
You can hear me now?
Can hear you now, yes.
Okay. Wasn't working before.
Beach is a whole lot quieter.
So, yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. I was just typing that I was muted.
Tammy, for doing your tooling, you're talking tooling that's used on the machine?
She hasn't unmuted herself yet, so I'm not sure, Calvin.
There, I'm unmuted now.
Hey.
Sorry about that. So I think my main question is should we move it out of the item master or not? You know, now that you can have put the 0 on the BOM, it's not calling out anything in MRP, that's working well, but it's a lot of part numbers in the item master. So we're just debating if anybody's done this project, if they've created their own tool master and then, you know, worked with it or not, what's worked for people.
What's stopping you from using it as a resource?
It's that, I think there's a lot of routes we could go.
I know in the past, everybody would turn around and do it, or they'd put it on the BOM with a 0.0001 quantity. So that, yeah, it really didn't have a quantity, and then they would just adjust inventory quarterly or annually just to zero it back out.
Now
You
can have 0 quantity on a bill now, so that's not a requirement.
Exactly, but the drawback is it doesn't show that the 1 is in use on the job. So if I only have 1 1/4-inch drill bit, it's going to think I can run 5 jobs with that material because it's called as a material. It's just going to tell you go buy more for purchasing, but purchasing is going to be monitoring the tooling. So that's why I would say leave it as a resource and put both the machine and the resource, kind of like gauge calibration and gauges were done, where I had a machine and I had a gauge that had to be used.
And Brad,
this way it doesn't overschedule it.
Brad, I promoted you to panelist so that you can join in here too. I'm sorry, I didn't notice you were on the call.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, we started implementing this in the last company I was at, and we went the resource route, like
I just find it a whole lot easier.
Calvin was mentioning.
Yep.
You can move from site to site if you had. Yeah, you have a scheduling capability, you know, if you only have 1 tool, like you said. And so now we had thousands of tools, so that was a project getting them in, but it's no different than entering part numbers. I mean, you got to put them in somewhere. And then the advantage of a resource, I think if you went the asset module, I think you could actually use the asset module to do end of life on tools. So I think there's another option, and then the maintenance module, I think you could take that tool as a resource and go and move it out, to be worked on and such. So I think the resource side probably offers a little bit more opportunity. But.
And then also do the maintenance counter, because the tool may only be good for 100,000 uses. So I can use the maintenance module to track how many times it's been used, and then turn around and schedule either a resharpening of the tool
Yes,
or a
and it
replacement.
was not very long-lived.
One
And
of the things about using resources is you can create a resource group for where I've done this in the past with molds. So you might have 5 identical molds. Create one resource group for that mold, and then put all 5 molds in there. And now the system will schedule those 5 molds, but it will never schedule more than 5 jobs at one time. If you have 10 jobs, it'll say you can do 5 today and 5 tomorrow, but you can't do all 10 at once. So there's that kind of concept that you can do well with resources. And you also don't have to issue them out of stock. That's the thing, is they're just consumed during the time that the job is active, scheduled.
So I would recommend using the resources for this and use the DMT to mass load them out of parts and put them in as resources. Once you add them as resources, you can also check if you have the asset management, not just the maintenance module, but create the asset to track that tool as well.
Okay.
The other thing that you haven't mentioned, there's two different kinds of tools. There's the tools that last forever, and then there's what I would say is, the consumable tooling. Sandpaper is a consumable tooling. Grinding wheels. I did have one customer recently that they consumed those grinding wheels at a rate of about about a quarter of a grinding wheel per job. And so they did actually put that in the bill of material and put in that it was a quarter of one per job. And they also did backflushing of it. So it just basically automatically consumed their grinding wheels. That way, because they always bought lots of them because they consumed them all the time. But there's different kinds of tools that you need to maybe look at different ways.
Calvin, can you speak to, Lori had some input there too, the last 3 items.
Using the BOM to track the number of uses, yep, for the fixture and the tool, like we were doing, how many runs was on that job, tracks how many times the tool got used. And then she said here also the quantity loaded on the fixture, the part number represented the useful life of the tool. When it hits the planning workbench, the tool or fixture gets evaluated and the new useful life quantity got loaded. And then same thing also, getting backflushed if we use it as a material. Yes, if you know it's only good, like Tim was saying also, it's only good for 4 uses, then we just turn around and backflush it and the BOM calls out that we need a quarter of it. That would not be using the resource, that would be going back to a material.
Does that help, Tammy?
Or did we muddy the waters?
We did tell her to use both ways, so.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one here. Mike Mullaney from Cormark Metals, looking for other users who have implemented Epicore wireless warehouse handheld. I think he's looking to get some people to meet up with to get some ideas on how to do things. So if you are working with Epicore wireless warehouse handheld, if you could type your name into the questions, I'll forward those over to Mike Mullaney so that he can follow up with you. Christine from Ag Leader. Christine, you should still be on here. In a backlog scenario or because of supply chain inconsistency, why is it important that I move PO due dates, job request dates, and sales order dates to reflect what's really happening in the supply chain instead of leaving dates as they were originally entered?
Well, when you lie to the system, you get it to lie back to you.
That's right. It's a great liar. If you tell it the wrong facts, it will give you the wrong facts back. And if your purchasing system is telling you that you're going to have it at a certain date, the system will assume that that's correct, and people will look at it and go, "Oh yeah, that part's coming in next week." It isn't, but you don't know that. And the system's planning around that and won't tell you to expedite things, or won't tell you to reschedule sales orders, or won't tell you to reschedule jobs. So it can't make any decisions for you if you don't tell it all the facts.
Right. No, I totally agree. I'm going to use your answers to report back to the people that do not believe us necessarily, or not necessarily don't believe us, but are fighting back on the idea of moving these dates.
So
It's
the worst
too much
department,
work.
the worst department is the purchasing department. And so I say worst because purchasing is the bottom of the line. They're the last people to know about things. So if somebody creates a sales order that is due a month out, and then that creates a job, and then that creates a purchase order suggestion. You create the PO suggestion, and the supplier says, sorry, you're not going to get the part for 6 months. It doesn't matter what you do. You can put in a PO and say, I'm going to lock the date out there 6 months out. MRP will look at it and go, oh, wow, you're not going to get these parts for 6 months. You better go create a new PO for next week. And it'll do that every day. It will never stop until you reschedule the job.
Right. And then, or if anything, if you also reschedule your sales order to go out.
Yes.
To say, I'm not going to do anything with it until the next 6 months, so you don't backlog. So when the scenario is because of the pandemic, right? There are shortages of all these parts. And so when you count by thousands and thousands of part numbers, it gets overwhelming for people. So want to use your answers
if your finance guy doesn't support you, a guy or gal doesn't support you on this, I don't know who will. Because here's the other side. If I've got a sales order that we put in for next week, it's creating a job to finish next week. And if you're not going to get the materials for 6 months, you should reschedule that sales order and the job, because you don't need any of the other materials for that job either. And right now the system is saying, hey, get all those materials in for this job and reserve them for this job because we need them. And you don't really need all that stuff for 6 months.
And everybody spends way too much time weeding through the things that they don't need to spend time on.
Right.
So you answered exactly what I expected your answer to be. So this is perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, Jennifer threw a question on top of that. How do companies retain the original customer request date if they're redating things? And that's either just putting it in the trace log or in the audit log of the change, putting that into the comments that the date was moved by customer or internal, who moved and why the date changed, so that we make sure that, yes, it flows down also to the job or over to the purchase order suggestion, and making sure that they stay in sync. But if we don't put the dates in, then nobody is trusting the system, and now I have sales, manufacturing, and purchasing not working together.
And my suggestion is always to create a user-defined field in the sales system that says the customer requested date. Customer wants it next week. We're not giving it to them. And basically, I like to use the word promise date. There's the customer requested date, which is next week, but our promise date is 6 months away.
Right. We did create a user-defined field and with a BPM. So when that date moves, we store the original date in a UD field so that we can do reporting of it later on, should anybody be interested in doing that.
Yep.
All right. Anything else on that one?
By the way, I'm going to have to bow out of this call. Sorry, I have another come back in if I get released from my other call, but I had an emergency.
So there's another one here from Mike. We use need by as promise date and ship by as active date.
That does work. That's one way of doing it. Because the ship by is the date that drives MRP and drives jobs. But you have to also be prepared that when you're not going to meet that ship by date, that you're going to change the ship by date to the real ship by date.
Correct. And Lori brought it up. Be careful if you're using the capable to promise with that scenario as well.
Okay, ready for the next one? All right, Melanie from Ace Precision. We currently have an imploded bomb SQL function. The function takes in a single material part number as a parameter and searches for all parent parts that contain this material part number in its bomb. The function then uses those parent numbers as material part numbers to query their parent part numbers. The data continues to recurse for up to 10 levels deep. Recently asked if we can include subassemblies for this recursion, since a subassembly is more of a lateral movement in the grand scheme of our parts hierarchy, as opposed to the next level up. Does anyone know how to accomplish something like this while considering the function's overall performance? And I should have unmuted Melanie, I'm sorry. Let me find her real quick.
I can get her for you. Or
Got
are
it.
you there?
Hey, Melanie, you should be unmuted now.
Yep. Hi.
Here comes the big question for you, Melanie. When you're doing this, which subassemblies do you want to include? And which subassemblies do you not? And is the subassembly always assembly level 0 on the related job? Or could it be an indented subassembly in a multi-level bomb?
It's an indented subassembly in a multi-level bomb. I was hoping you weren't gonna.
I forgot I have my camera on. Unless you put a flag somewhere inside that assembly layer to mark that it is a subassembly that you want to include for this, there would be no way to know, oh, here it's at subassembly level 42 and I want to include this, but here it's assembly 0 and I want to include it. Then it's on my parent part job, assembly 0, and I want to include it. You just need a way to indicate which subassemblies you want to include in this recursive query so that those become part of the exported data set.
So when you're going through the part bill of material and you start with your material part and you get, all those parent parts, if that parent part has a subassembly on it, it's almost going backwards to look back down the hierarchy.
Correct. You
And
probably, go ahead,
yeah,
Melanie.
I was just going to say that that's what my issue is. Like, I don't know how to address that without major performance issues going through the entire bill of material.
What I would end up doing, it's going to I'm just spitballing it. I would probably write something that tells you all the parts that going down. So from like your finished goods, find all your bill of materials, because that's how part material is set up.
Okay.
Then what you can do is your query will find, so if you're going to start at part number X, then you can go up and you've got a table now populated, not a table, but basically an in-memory table, and you can find everything that's in its parent or that it's a child of, put that into a table. Now the second part of that is take that table and then go find what its submaterials are. So you have to go up and down, and
Okay.
it is going to be a performance hit.
Why would I need the submaterials to go back down? Because that part would have to show up as a job material in another approved revision to be included.
Not a job material, but a part material.
Yeah.
So if you've got the full, if you take all your parts and basically build your BOM list for everything, then you've got the freedom to search, which is what part material is basically. And so you can search up and down either way.
Yeah, this one's going from the bottom up, though. It's kind of made it a little bit more difficult than top-down bill of material. But I think you guys answered my question. Basically, it's going to be a lot more fiddling around with the actual function to try and get it to work. I mean, I was hoping there'd be like a simple answer and how I could add it to my current recursion query, and it doesn't sound like it's going to be as simple as I had hoped.
I don't think so, but I think by getting that in-memory list to start with, it will help your performance.
Okay.
Because if you try to recurse both directions, that's going to be really expensive. But if you start with the known data set, and then you can just directly interface with it, I think you'll be better off. And that should be a little bit faster.
I will give that a try.
Okay. Give me a shout if you get stuck and I can try and help point
I
you
will,
in some
thank you.
direction.
Thanks,
Sure.
Fred.
Okay, next up, Lisa Mccarty from Modern Welding. I'm on premise and use terminal services for all of our remote locations. Remote Epicore screens have small font and small screen, which our users are constantly complaining about. The smart client sessions that we use at corporate are a bit larger, but majority of our users use terminal server session. I realize that each user can change font and screen size, but I want a way to make it larger for all users. Any ideas? And when you had posted that out, Lisa, Aaron had written back in response to that question. They've got the same terminal server set up at multiple plants, and it's all incredibly specific to each monitor, which could have different resolutions. It's also specific to the terminal if you're on a thin client, Windows, Mac client, something else. So his short answer was, there's not a way to do what you're asking unless you all have the same size resolution for every monitor, every workstation set up for all the users. So if you're consistent across the board, you could do it, but otherwise, if there's any variation, it's not so easy. And I need to unmute Lisa. I forgot to do that. My bad. H-I-J-K-L. Lisa Mccarty. There you are. All right, Lisa, you should be able to speak if you need to.
Okay, yeah. Can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, that's the same problem we've been that I have experienced myself. I mean, some users have tried to change the screen size themselves, and that has also caused us some problems with some of the applications, some of the screens. They don't function like they're supposed to. They try to make them big, and then I found problems with, of course, they can't see some of the fields they're supposed to, and that's also caused some problems. So I would love to be able to figure out some way to do every person's window, make it big to where everything works. But I can't figure out a way to do it. We have a lot of our older users that they complain about their eyes going bad. They can't see very good. And I get it, but I don't know how to fix it. So.
I mean, another option, as terrible as it sounds, there is Windows Magnifier, which will help some.
Yeah.
Not really, not for an MES or a plant floor.
Yeah, otherwise, you could look at going with a 54-inch monitor for folks.
Yeah, I know.
The other one, Lisa, are you using Kinetic yet?
No, we're not. We're still using the classic interface.
Darn, because with Kinetic, you can wheel mouse forward and it zooms in.
Oh, really?
It's a web-based interface, so just like a web browser, control and wheel mouse forward zooms in on your screen. Wheel out moves out, so that I can zoom in or out through the Kinetic interface. The classic screen doesn't allow for that, but the Kinetic interface would.
Well, maybe that's something that we can, I'm definitely planning on upgrading at some point, obviously, but that's in the future. So.
And Matt Heddick also says that with Kinetic, when you resize the window, because it's Kinetic, the screens automatically relay themselves back out.
Yep.
So you can.
I'm going to hijack your screen share here. So this is the
fine.
Kinetic order entry. I can just wheel out, and where the grid becomes, I can make it super tiny, or
yeah.
I can wheel in, and now I can see everything on it. The Kinetic screens are all web-based, so this may be an answer for some of your heavy hitters with that remote desktop.
Oh, definitely. Okay, well that definitely helps. I mean, at least that gives me some screens I can test with and try it and see if it'll help them. So
you may get some early adopters. You never know.
That's exactly right. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Fred, I'll let you go ahead and take back over.
Hang 10, so sorry. Make presenter, there we go. Share my screen, I hope it's the right one.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so David Height, and I have an answer for you, David. Calvin, if you could unmute David, just in case he's got more questions. So David's got a BAQ where he wants to show job num, the current op, and the pending ops. So he's wondering how can he do that with a subquery to find that list of pending ops, but he wants it to be comma separated instead of just a table of items. And he's having a problem getting that. So David, there's this wonderful link out here that I've got for you. And it'll be included in the minutes and stuff.
Now, David, I unmuted you and I sent you a request to go ahead and unmute yourself. if you want to hop in here.
And what I did, David, is for me, when I start dealing with recursive stuff, it's easier for me to write it in SQL first and then translate it to a BAQ. So if you were going to do this with regular SQL, there's two routes you can go from that reference. One is using what's called the 4XML path. And what you do is you basically have a subquery here that finds you your information. And the 4XML path, you can then concatenate that stuff together. The stuff up here is just removing an extra comma that ends on the back. So I've got two job numbers that I picked out of the Epicore training database that had pending operations. And this would be what my pending operations would show up like. Since I don't think we have 4XML in BAQs, I went for the recursion route. And with the recursion route, again, that reference talked about using things with row numbers and then using a recursive CTE to combine that together and get your commas put in there. And that one ends up working same route. Now, if you're doing direct SQL, I did find that when I include the actual execution plan here and run these two, that 4XML query is 5% of the total time that this query ran. The other query is 95% of my execution plan. So speed-wise, the XML is far more efficient if you're going to do direct SQL. So not having the XML, I tried to get this recursion done in a BAQ. So I'll try and walk you through what I did here because it's not as easy as I originally thought. It's fun. So, and that's fun with a capital Q. So I started out, just start with this ranked CTE. So what I did is I created that and I put in my where clause so that I could limit it down. It's just the job opper, and I'm returning my job opper, the current operation, which what this current operation is, I converted it to a character so that I can do string concatenation easier. So if I convert it up front, it's far easier. That rank is just doing row number over partition by, which means it starts renumbering every time the job number changes, ordered by the operation sequence, so that things are in the right order. Your 20 is followed by 30 is followed by 40, so on and so forth. So that gets me this first ranked query. So after that, I got my anchor ranked, which is using my ranked, and it's just where the calculated rank is equal to 1. Now the trick on this one, I put out the same fields that I did from rank, but in order to later on, I need this join down here to join to the next level, the next rank, so to speak. So the rank plus 1. So in order to do that, I had to actually go backwards or put that field into my anchor ranked CTE so that it's available for the next query to use, because you can't do a join on math in Epicore. So you have to do the math up front. That's why this calculated rank plus 1 is literally that ranked field plus 1.
And Mike Mullaney has a suggestion for you also on that there, Fred.
String aggregate and T-SQL. Awesome. We'll have to give that a shot. So after this, I did my recurred rank, which is my CTE. Again, I just took my anchored rank, put it out there. And then in Epicore, what you do is your next one has to be a union all, which is this second section. And that's where I did this join. And instead of in my query, I've got it as a rank plus 1. Here I just did it as a join to the anchor fields rank plus 1. And then that gets me things in the right order. Then, Calvin, if you can mute when you type.
Right.
Then what I did is just do my top level query, which is joining my rank and my max ranked, which I'll get to you in a second. So this is actually my output. This other one that I built, all that that's doing, display fields, is I'm doing a group by on the job number, calculating the max rank, because every time we go through this, we're adding another operation on and the rank is becoming larger. Well, I just want that last row, so to speak. So by doing a max on the rank and then doing a join at my top level query, I can find the last row. And then when I test this guy out, I get the same results as I did over from SQL. So it's a little more complex, can be done. And what I'll do is I'll take this BAQ, I'll export it, and I've also got the SQL exported for you, and I can send that out in the minutes as well, so that you've got that for a reference.
Thanks, Fred. Sorry, I had to go away for a little bit there. I caught most of that. I appreciate any help that you can do with that. So I look forward to your exports.
You bet, man. No problems. Unmute yourself, Calvin.
I wasn't making any noise on the last round. Pierre had a suggestion for you also in the chat window. I guess another way of doing is creating an aggregate and concatenating it.
There you go. So with SQL, multiple ways to skin it. Sometimes what you can do in SQL, you can do inside the BAQ. The best way to know, give it a shot. Like for the longest time, we didn't know row number worked inside of the BAQs, and then gave it a shot. And it's like, oh, we can. So there is quite a bit of power in there. You just have to try things out. Okay, Lee Van Vagel over at Wisconsin Oven. I think he asked this when Justin was doing his presentation with DocStar and ECM. How do I add security to attachments in E10? I've been unable to find where to do this. For example, if a supplier's W-9 is attached, she wants to be able to say only certain people can open that document up. If you're using DocStar, Justin walked through how to do security groups. And Calvin, if you could unmute Lee too, in case she's got to follow on. He walked through how to do the permission groups inside of DocStar. So in the tree in Epicore, you'll still see that document, but you won't be able to open the document unless you've got permissions for DocStar. That's if you've got DocStar. If you don't have DocStar and you're just working with Epicore proper, Tim, you might have a better idea on this, but I was thinking you could solve it with NTFS permissions.
Correct.
So if it's a W-9, go in and set the permissions that only a certain group has read access to that. Does that help you, Lee?
Yes, kind of. So can you explain what NTFS is?
Sure, that is your file system.
Your Windows.
Oh, the file system. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would
if I go
likely
to-
be our IT. And
Yep.
if we're storing on a Google server,
It would follow the
without-
same with the Google security. So Google allows you to also put security on folders of who can get to it and who can't. You would put a security and then have the file moved into like a financial folder where only the finance people have access to read, or maybe finance securities have the access to read and to write. So you have to be a member of the security group to be able to put the file up there, but other people at the accounting department, they could see it, but they just can't write them.
okay, so that would be something probably our IT person has to set up, I'm assuming.
When you create
Okay.
a folder on Google, you would set what the security or what the user security is going to be to get to it.
And the other approach that I would look at, but this also takes IT, is to write a BPM that looks at whenever somebody tries to open attachment, it looks at what kind of an attachment it is and decide whether they're in the right security group to see that attachment.
Right.
There you
Okay,
go.
thank you.
Because in the document attachments, you can say what type of file it is.
Yeah.
And also on that, Lee, if you do end up moving files so that they go into a secure folder, be aware that when you move it, you're going to need to go back into Epicore and adjust that X file attach, or else it will be linked to the old path, and nobody will open it from Epicore because it'll be pointing to the wrong location.
That's why
Okay.
the BPM option might be the simpler one, because you don't have to put it into a special folder. They could be all mixed up, but it looks at the type of attachment and says, oh, no, that's a W-9, you know.
You're not
Yeah, that's
allowed
a clever way to solve it.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And I think for Mark Wensel, Calvin, if you can unmute him just in case. This came in while you were doing your presentation, or at the after you had quit your presentation. I'm sorry, Calvin. What are the requirements for enabling CDC?
Well, you get COVID, you go to the hospital.
Not that CDC.
We're talking a different CDC, but TUI.
Nice one.
Oh, come on. It was awesome. It fit. I was like, whoever picked that acronym for Windows 11 or Epicore 11, I'm like, for real? Okay. So for the CDC, when you set up a subscriber, you're going to turn around and set who has access to it. What was the original question, Fred?
What are the requirements for enabling CDC?
Okay, so when you're turning around and enabling it, you're doing change data capture. You're authorizing someone to connect into you and creating a subscriber and a publish so that they can push and get data back and forth from Epicore. So I don't really understand, and requirements is you have to give them access and a token and a URL in. So when you create those subscribers, you have to set them up as a person, add them. What is their mode going to be? Are they going to be pushing data? Is it a push-pull, or are they just pulling data from Epicore? Then once I set up that registered subscriber or the path, then I turn around and can add to it, register with it. The subscriber management needs to be set up. Then I can go into the table management, track the logs of what's being sent back and forth, and a notification sender that, hey, when data is moving, do I have to notify somebody?
And Mark, you should be able to unmute yourself. You said you lost audio, but I unmuted you again. Hopefully. Maybe, maybe not.
I'll send the unmute request over to a screen.
While we're waiting for Mark, Lee, there was a follow-on from Matt
now?
Heck. Oh, there you are, Mark. Go ahead. Oh, we had Mark. Now he's muted again. It's one of those days. I think it's on you, Mark, to unmute yourself.
Now
There
I'm
you
there.
go.
Sorry. When I unmuted, it switched me out and I missed all the audio after Calvin's great dad joke in the beginning about the CDC, which I appreciated more than anyone else in this meeting. I know it. So basically, I missed what you said. What I'm trying to do is I'm looking at enterprise search now supports, instead of doing a full update of everything, it now can be powered by CDC, change data capture. And every time I open up the tables, I try to enable one, it doesn't, and I don't know why. And I thought maybe there's some licensing involved or I'm doing something wrong, but I go to part table and I say enable, and then I want to eventually feed the log over to enterprise search so that it updates every 5-15 minutes, only the thing that needs to be indexed. Does that make sense?
Yep, and then is enterprise search configured to pull that data from Epicore? Because I don't think it'd be pushing it back. It should be doing a search pull from Epicore and putting that content then into the enterprise search database.
Probably true, but at some point you have to enable the table first before any of that can happen. And that's where I'm getting stopped. And that's why I was wondering if there's any requirements.
Okay, under CDC Table Management,
Yep.
You're going to pull the table, you're going to tie the schema, and then in the action should be an enable or a disable.
Yep, and then when you hover it or highlight it, you click enable, nothing happens. And this is Kinetic 2021 2.9. So I'm in the testing stage here. I know 10's out. Is it just me?
I'm scrolling through here with you.
Yeah, it just nothing happened. So maybe it's just something on the version that I'm on at the moment, and I need to report it.
It could be, but I'm not sure.
Give me a second because I have to run the generate on my training.
Yeah. Takes about 15 seconds usually.
That's what you say. Did you see my Kinetic Studio getting slower and slower as the session went?
That's true. That's true.
My application studio is closed, so hopefully this will move a little quicker. There we go. Okay.
And there's no limitation on tables, right? It doesn't matter what schema we're in. It's not like only ERP tables because they do.
No, it shouldn't. Now, when I turn around and click enable, it shows capture enabled on my screen.
All right. Well, I'll just have to report it then. It's
Yep,
definitely not happening.
Okay. Oh.
And I try it all three ways. I try to click on the box. I tried clicking on the checkbox above, and then the ellipse enable.
Yeah, no, I'm running 2021.1.12.
All right, we'll do that. I'm doing 2.9.
You're on a newer version, so
I'm on a newer version. So maybe something happened. Okay, I don't want to hold this up.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys.
Mason from Power Solutions. Does Epicore University have courses on basic and advanced customization for release 11.x?
Yes. Those are already out there and available. Mason, if you turn around and get in touch with Amy Melton, she's also accepting people on the beta program for future versions. This will also get you access to a few developers that she pulls into the beta program, and you can talk with some of the developers on how do I do this? How do I handle this? How does this work? Why doesn't this work this way? Not like I'm speaking from experience, but when they put those developers on those weekly meetings, you get a free question session, a Q&A session with them all the time. So that's also a good place to be now that is cutting edge because you have to be on the latest and greatest and up to date. If you're in the cloud, you're already there. Now it's just doing the beta testing or I think the early adopters, early access program. I don't remember what they call it now, Tim. I know they had a new name. It wasn't called beta anymore. It's early something. No, it's
early access.
There you go. And that gives you early access to the development, but it also gives you on a weekly meeting where you're doing the software testing, helping them define how you want the program to work, what you need it to do before it goes out for general release. So this may be also a good place to get information and learn how to use the new studio.
Okay. Ethan Kiley, and I'm sorry, Ethan, didn't have a chance to look up your company name. In App Studio in a web browser control, can the URL that is being populated be data-driven? For example, say you're on a screen for an order and the order number is 1234. Can you have the URL for the browser be www.mysite.com, question order num equal 1234?
Yes, somebody asked me that question in the session, and I turned around and answered that. Was that also Ethan?
I think if you just go into the browser and go into an order, pull up 1234, you'll see what the format looks like.
Yep.
Because it does show it. It's
okay.
not hidden.
Maybe it was somebody else that answered, but I remember that exact question. Populating the URL with like on the ship via table, you have a tracking URL field, and then you have a tracking number field where you marry the two together. You can definitely do this moving forward.
Okay.
To see the format, just go into an order, pull up order 1234, and look at your URL at the top, and you'll see what the format of that data is.
Okay.
We've got for you.
Matt Heck from Latitude. Calvin, if you can unmute Matt while I'm reading. Is there any indication that Epicore is working to add data validation system-wide? I'm often frustrated by the lack of any check to make sure that the format of any data meets our defined company standard for any Epicore data field. Building BPMs to do this ourselves would be great if we could magically add more hours to the day. Or can any control derived context data?
Yes, kind of. In the kinetic, you can do this. Because I can turn around and use that regular expression and turn around and put a regular expression, copy and paste that onto the fields that I want to mandate what they follow. That's a quick way to copy and paste it while you're in the form or the application studio. So I can use a regular expression builder and force how they have to type in the new information.
I think the challenge to this question, and I'm going to point out the word every, I think was somewhere in there, that what is a standard data, a valid data for one company is invalid for another, and that's where it becomes a big challenge. Some companies want their part numbers to always be upper and lowercase, and some only want uppercase. Some don't want to have upper lowercase descriptions, and others don't. You know, it is a complex problem to say, oh, here is what the valid answer is for any field, and that's why we've left the tool set. Now, there's certain fields that we have specific validation on, but for
America, there have to be numbers.
Yeah,
they have to be real dates on the calendar.
Yep. And but you have situations in some countries they want certain things certain ways, and so we are a global company and we have to support what they want in all places of the world too. So
right, yeah, I totally get all that. I just apart from writing our own BPMs, doing our own customizations, regular expressions. Like take one classic example for us internally is we set up our cycle count program a while back, and big part of that was having a standard format for our bin IDs. Because of course, if I just say, yeah, go and leave it up to standard production folk or other admin, I'll have bin IDs, random this and random that, and then I'll get the inevitable request like, hey, give me a query, and I'll be like, yeah, can I query any sort of similarity between the bin IDs to find like, nope, because we use random formats. And so what I'd love is that if Epicore put in a feature where, okay, for bin ID or part ID, wherever, maybe a new menu item, and lock it down to whoever you want that said for the bin ID, this is the regular expression format that you need to follow, site dash shelf dash whatever, and you could have a little pop-up saying this is what it is, or user training, but it would force them so that it wouldn't be on me to always create it for them and hold their hand, but that they could still create it themselves, but they'd have to follow our defined company format. And yes, I realize I can write this, the BPMs and put it on the fields and application studio myself, but it's just it's a free for all, and I see this constantly where people just they decide to do their own thing, and then you have 30 different permutations on part number field or whatever, and it just becomes a nightmare.
Yeah, I agree. And part of when I was a field consultant, I always said these setup tables, the 120 or 130 setup tables that are out there, they need to be controlled, and they need to have the right people able to create new product groups and new part classes and follow your rules. And if you have people adding bins that don't follow your rules, then that's that is a challenge. And if you need to have it done by multiple people, then the only way to solve that is having a BPM at this point. We don't have that functionality.
A data directive would probably be easiest.
Yeah, a data directive. But I would also say, that's what Epicore Ideas is about. We've got the website out there. Go ahead and post an Epicore idea and get people to vote on it. And these types of things, I know that there's one Epicore idea that has a lot of votes on it, and it's coming soon. because we were able to justify it because we had so many customers said, yeah, we want that too. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. No, that's perfectly fine, and I will go ahead and do that when I get a chance. I just wanted to know if there was already like, oh yeah, yep, we've got this in there, we're working on it. There's going to be coming out a new update. Yeah. That would have been.
No, there is nothing out there right now that's promoting that as a new feature yet.
Gotcha.
But I know.
Like I said online, Matt, just get a nun with a ruler.
Yeah. Then you gotta keep in mind that is wait a minute, I am still in a business environment. Can't be too harsh. Gotta roll it back. And then on the other question that came up a little bit ago, I think Fred was going to mention it, but I just wanted to mention real quick on the file permissions for attachments, whether you're just doing the simple direct attachments or if you got the fancy DocStar. I would never give any individual user or group direct permissions on a attachment directory that Epicore is using. Have Epicore have the Epicore service account, whatever on your server side, have the permissions to that directory so that you have to go through the application and the application has permissions on it. Because if you get hit with ransomware or anything that's going to mess with anything that your user account has permissions to, the last thing you want it to be able to hit is file attachments that are critical for your Epicore application. So separate those two things out.
Yep. The other thing I like about that is in Epicore 10.2, I want to say somewhere in 10.2, they came out with that file maintenance where it'll go out and show you what links are broken. So this is what I have in the system. It looks to validate that the file exists in the file structure and then gives you a report of these are the ones that are broken. Someone moved the Windows file but never updated Epicore. So that you can periodically check that and make sure that the links are not being broken.
Okay. That is all the submitted ones I had.
I have a question online from Kyle Schneider. Can Epicore add the feature like Avalara does with a mixed case versus uppercase? The drawback with doing that, Kyle, is AT&T is capital A, capital T, ampersand, and then capital T. But if I do IBM, it would be capital I, little b, little m, because there's no space in between them. Avalara even has problems with that as well, where what's the difference between an acronym versus a short word? So there's no real way to do that or kind of build that in or put that into a company config setting. That also becomes a policy because we run across that here where people add customers. Do you put the period in between the acronym so that the regex expression editor makes sure that it went in correctly? If they don't do that, then it's not going to recognize that it's an acronym for a company name. It's going to treat it as a name and capitalize the first letter. So this is a rough thing, and I've run across it also with Avalara when we integrate, because when we do the customer transfer to do the customer capture portion, it goes the exact same way. It's what's a uppercase versus camel case. And there is no simple place to really put that in the software so that, yes, we always follow this because it's how do the users then enter the data to make sure that it follows the same rule. I'll go ahead and send an unmute request to you, Kyle. Did that answer the questions that you were asking?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it just dawned on me that Avalara does it, with it, maybe it was a possibility for customer names or I guess even addresses elsewhere, right? For vendor side, right? Because Avalara only works with the AR side, not the AP side, so you can't validate an address to make it, proper or all upper. It was just a thought, but if it doesn't work, like I get it, there's a lot of things to go through and kind of go with it.
A lot of rules.
Yep, we also had a client come to us and have us do an address validation within their UPS connection to make sure that we went out to UPS, validated if the address was within 85%, we used the UPS address when we added it into Epicore, just because they had tens of thousands of addresses and contacts in their system. So
Yeah,
we
actually,
used the UPS to make sure the package could get shipped to the customer.
that's funny that you bring that up because QuickShip uses the UPS. Avalara has a different. They look at Puerto Rico different. We have the conflicting all the time, changing. There's a way to get a workaround. I just haven't done that yet, but it is funny how you bring that up. They don't like each other.
Yep, and then the address will run across it where I'm on Northwest 17th Street. The NW is capitalized, but when it does it, it tries to camel case it in the address line.
Yeah.
And I had a system years ago that nicely tried to format your phone numbers with parentheses and everything if you put in 9 digits or whatever it is, 10 digits. But if you didn't do 10 digits, you only did 7, it didn't do the parent. And there was all sorts of weird rules. Well, it just completely fails when you go to international phone numbers. And phone number formatting is very problematic.
I know, I just try to get the ones off the bathroom wall to be written correctly. That's rough enough.
Okay, any other questions?
Brad had said it sounds like there could be a mask feel on the extended properties. I think that would be the easiest way to do that, Brad, or a data directive, and then just copy that directive. If we had the ability to add functions to data directives inside Kinetic, that'd be wonderful, but I haven't seen that yet in Kinetic. But then I could turn around and write a function that turns around, handles my camel case or my formatting, and then attach that to the data directive that I want to put on these key tables. I'm not going to worry so much that they got the ship via typed in right, or as Matt said, maybe we do need it on the bin table. But then I would be able to copy that function, just say use it on this business object, use it on this business or data table, use it on this data table for the in transaction, just follow that rule. That might be an easier way to do this also.
All right, we've got one from Dan Tillery. How often should a small SQL Server system be rebooted, in my opinion? Because this was directed at me. And Dan also said SQL Server reboot will reset the log files. The SQL Server reboot will reset the log files, just restarting your SQL service without rebooting SQL itself will reset the log files. There's also a stored procedure that you can call that will reset the log files. So there's 3 places you can do that. In a small SQL Server, how often should you reboot? Only when Windows updates forces you to. Prior to Windows updates being as regular as they are, I had systems that would run 6 months to a year without a reboot because nobody was applying updates, which wasn't necessarily the smartest thing either. But you can run for quite a while without rebooting a server. It'll be just happy and fine. I only reboot our internal servers when Windows updates are getting applied and Windows updates requires it. How often should the scripts from Ola be run? I would do that weekly, since they are smart enough to know if a table is fragmented or not, and it will put the appropriate action in place. Those I can run on a frequent basis, like weekly, with very little, oh, Calvin, you killed off the question and you don't have it anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Just a minute.
Got it.
So those will stick around, and you'll be just fine running Ola on a weekly basis. I would not run it on a daily basis or frequently as frequently as that, simply because you are doing rewrites to the system. And even if you're on SSDs, there's a limited lifetime on those SSDs. So you don't want to have extra disk access that you don't need. If you find that your system slows down Monday through Friday, it keeps getting slower, but then on Monday it's fast again, then obviously those weekly scripts are helping. that would be an argument for running those reindexes more frequently, or figure out what else is going on that's causing that to happen. And is that also when everyone is off the system and the application pool stopped? So the SQL maintenance you can do outside of the IIS maintenance, and unless you have a reason to, I wouldn't necessarily reboot the application pools. They don't need to be stopped and restarted unless there's a reason for it. A good reason for that would be like when you regenerate your database model or you're applying an Epicore patch. That's going to require those to be restarted. So that would be a good point where you need the app pools restarted. Does that answer your question, Dan?
Restarting that application pool brings everybody back to square one as well within IIS. So I'm not going to say necessarily do that too frequently. You want to keep the users moving fast through the software.
Oh, that sounds great. Thanks, guys.
You bet.
And
Okay.
Just real quick.
Go ahead, Dan.
With the scripts, are you allowed to run those while people are on the system then?
Yeah.
Say that again.
Don't do it if you have everybody running on the system, but if it's after hours and there are less use hitting it, you can run some of those scripts while users are in there. You can restart your server while people are in there if it's a virtual machine. They're just going to pick up and reconnect when the server is back and available.
Yeah, it's mostly our data collection terminal. So, okay. I just wasn't sure if everybody had to be, off the system when we're doing any of the maintenance at all, like you're saying. So
it's better if they are, but it's not a requirement. The system will still work while the CheckDB is running. The system will still work while there's a reindex running. On an index rebuild, the index actually goes offline, so you're going to see slower performance while the index gets rebuilt. And there are certain tables in Epicore that the index has to be rebuilt when it gets defragmented. But again, those Hollengren scripts are the least invasive. So you're not rebuilding everything, you're not re-indexing everything, you're only doing what you have to do. So they're the least invasive way to do that with the least impact on performance, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it, Fred.
You bet.
Awesome. Norm has a question here on how to find the previous op of the current op on a job in a BAQ. And I'm going to just say right under their BAQ to pull back that job, that assembly, and sort the operations descending and make it a top one. So the very first one, smaller than the op you're currently on, is your previous op.
But that gets more complicated if there's multiple sub-assemblies. So just be careful with that. Because if you have a job with,
if you're on op 10, yes.
There is a table that stores the assembly sequences and tells you which one's after the other, and you can get the sequence for that. So you'd actually sort on that assembly sequence, not the assembly sequence you're used to seeing, but there's a sequence item inside of it. Sort on that, then sort on your operation sequence, because that one is sortable directly. And then just do it like Calvin said, in descending order, and find the top one that isn't complete. Or the top one that is complete, I'm sorry, because you're looking for the previous.
But one thing that can happen when you have multiple sub-assemblies is that you could have 5 sub-assemblies all with active operations at the same time. And so there are 5 previous operations as well.
Yeah, he was saying he's just looking for the previous op of the current operation on the job. So
okay, yes, then that would be the previous operation of the current subassembly you're also working with. So.
And incidentally, Norm, you can also use that exact same logic, do a top one where you start at that operation number and take the first one in the sequence going next, and that happens to fit on your labels when you want to find out where does this job need to get routed to. So that's how you find out where the next operation is when you go to do label.
I forgot to unmute Norm. I'm sorry, Norm. Give me just a second.
I was right-clicking on him and I screwed that up. Now you're unmuted, Norm. Oh, no, it looks like Fred remuted him.
I did the same darn thing. You should be able to unmute yourself now, Norm.
Hey guys, yeah, no, that I think that solved my question. I've already been finding the next op, but it was going backwards that I was struggling with, but I don't know why I didn't think of just turning that around.
Yep, just do a descending in your sort, and then top one.
Thanks.
Right, from Matt Heck, does SSO work with the latest version of Kinetic Thick Client and/or web access?
Did it work with the last one? But boom. Sorry, I had to put that in there. I'm like, Matt's like, does it work with the next one? I'm like, did it work with the last one? SSO is kind of a kludge no matter how you look at it. It's not a true Active Directory integration with Epicore. Are you looking to do this for a security requirement so that we can validate that the person at the terminal is also the person that's using Epicore? Or do we need to use a security badge to make sure that they're the right one? With your CMMC and your NST requirements, I'm thinking you may want to have a tighter way of doing that.
So first question, yes, single sign-on does currently work with the thick client, or actually installing the application now. We're on 10.2.312. There was a note in the installation guide for
the error in printing.
No, yeah, that's a separate issue that I saw the note about that. Yes, I figured out what that was, but no, there was a separate note about they were deprecating one of the authentication types in the app server configuration, and that was the one that was necessary to enable SSO. That was in the latest version of the Kinetic, latest as of a couple months ago when Kevin Kludak was helping me install our development environment. And so SSO is important to me from a cybersecurity standpoint, but also because it simplifies login process for our users. I'm really pushing our environment to have SSO wherever possible to eliminate people's need to remember yet another username and password. And so they'll sign on in whatever method. We've got multi-factor MFA set up to log into the Windows workstation, and then I just want everything that's possible to be able to launch Epicore or whatever it is, and then sign on with the Windows account that they're signed in with. And I know that the thing that was enabling that was being deprecated, and so I just wanted to know if that was being worked on with a thick client or just a web access, which I'm also very much in favor of going to, so I no longer have to install Epicore anywhere.
So with Epicore using a web browser, the other feature is that you can also use something like automatic password population. What's it called? My mind just went blank which one I used, but something that automatically chooses automatically populates your login and password. You can do that with the web browser version.
That would be like LastPass is a good tool for that.
Yes, LastPass, yes. So I use LastPass to get in because I have, I don't know, 6-7 different Epicore accounts that I access via Kinetic, via web browser, and they all have different logins and passwords. It auto-populates them for me because each one's a separate website, and it knows which login and password to use.
And I think that was the TCP binding, the Windows TCP binding protocols that we're changing, Matt. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's what they're deprecating in an upcoming release. So, and perfectly. I mean, the password managers are great. I have yet to implement that for us in our company setting. I personally use it as well in my personal life, but that has its own pros and cons, and I'm just not there yet for company use on it specifically. So yeah, just looking for that SSO feature to just reuse their Windows credentials that they're signed into the workstation with.
Yep. And it was with modifying the web config file. I want to say Nathan Anderson has a document on that as well.
Yeah, that's
set up in Kinetic. Okay. I know enough to be dangerous, Matt. That's all that counts.
I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah, the real goal here is to eliminate passwords eventually and go passwordless, but that's a longer term plan.
That's when you have to give DNA samples to log in.
Exactly.
Heather Hahn, is it safe to update SQL? Is it safe to update SQL as updates for it come out? How much do you test SQL updates before you apply them? I'll take this one. Heather, in the past 2-3 years, I usually wait about a week or a little bit longer after a SQL update comes out and look for reviews on it. If there's nothing bad on it, I can go ahead and apply it. And to be honest, sometimes I don't even search for the reviews because trust me, you'll hear when things blow up. There are some people out there that apply them immediately and they will find any problem far faster than I do. And since SQL is such a general tool, I rely on them as opposed to running through a series of tests of things that I do specifically with SQL, because some of those folks are far smarter than I am even. Does that help, Heather? I should have unmuted you, I'm sorry. Heather Hahn, there you are. Let me unmute you. I see you're logged in twice, so I unmuted both of them, I think. If you want to unmute yourself, if you've got any follow-ons, Heather. All right, we'll say Heather's okay. For Mike Mullaney, he said there's also a lead and lag functions for getting the next or previous record value. They work just like row number and stuff. Heather, there you are.
Hey, Fred. Sorry about that. Yeah, it does help. Thank you so much. Now, what if there were problems? How would you revert back to the previous? I guess I just need to look that up.
Yeah, typically,
Test environment.
yeah, what I would do is look in the release notes for the item and see what their rollback procedure is.
Okay.
Typically you can do it pretty easy, just depends on what they're doing. If it is a major concern for you, then what I would do is set up a separate SQL server that's for a test environment, put the update there, make sure everything runs for a couple of days, and then go apply it to production.
Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I really haven't seen a bad SQL Server update in probably 20 years-ish. 6, 5, and 7, we're kind of prone to it, but since then, it's not been a big deal so much anymore.
I kind of figured it was probably pretty safe, so.
Yeah. Okay. Mark Goldbrantz. How have companies worked with Epicore print routing and Office 365 anti-spamming rules? And Mark, I'm going to find you here and unmute you.
I'll take care of him. I got him. There you go, Mark.
And he also had we had issues with too many emails going out in a short time and getting blocked by 365.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now, sir.
So yeah, I think, again, I was trying to put some thoughts together very quickly, but yeah, print routing's been a great tool for us, but you go do a batch of invoices in the morning, we have 100 invoices and Epicore processes them and spits them out. And I believe the limit on O365 anti-spamming is like 35 emails a minute, I believe. And I was just curious, what people have done here to try to work around that, if they've encountered that, never had that problem, or maybe nobody uses O365 anti-spamming, I don't know. So thoughts on that?
You could get a slower server.
Yeah, all those years of trying to speed things up, huh? And I find, yeah. Yes. Anybody else run into this?
I just did a quick search and it says you can configure the anti-spam policies. So is there something you can change to make it so that increases?
We have done some of that, yes. Okay. But
and Aaron Schaefer said they use SMTP to go for Epicore email routing. Works great and very low cost.
SMTP to go?
Yes.
Yep.
And literally SMTP number 2, go.
Yep, or SMTP relay I set up for other customers. It's a shareware software that you can run in your server.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, I appreciate it. And Tim, we have been in there. We've done some work on that. I mean, there's some defaults in there of 100 or different number of limits. And we have, but we, even in spite of that, and again, you don't want to push them up to 1,000, right? And then all of a sudden, that lets Epicore go, but opens you up for other things that would normally be caught. And we did a lot of work with somebody, and we've had good success with O365 and their what used to be ATP, Anti-Threat Protection, is now Defender. With our Office Premium subscription, has done a lot for our email security. So I'm not going to say flawless, but done a lot for it. So I hate to undo it to accommodate those emails if I can find a way to satisfy both, stay secure and keep that things not getting rejected and stay secure. So, but I'll look at the SMTP to go as an option as well. So thank you.
Okay, if anybody else has questions, go ahead and type them in. Do want to say when the meeting closes, and I think tomorrow there will be an email that gets sent out with the survey. Please fill that out because it does help us figure out what you want to see in future meetings and gives us some feedback as to what's working, what's not. And I think, Tim, you had something you wanted to.
Yeah, just real quick. Insights, it's coming up. Sometimes Insights is just another event. This year, I think it's going to be there's going to be some new stuff that groups like this are going to really get excited about. And there's several things that I know that I can't talk about, but I know that if I were able to talk about it, we would have several people go, wow, I want that. So come to Insights and you'll get to hear about it.
Yep, we talked about it at the opener. Insights is the 23rd through the 26th. Yep. We also talked about possibly having the little user groups get together there at the venue and pulling some type of shindig for everybody at the same thing, kind of like we've done in past years.
Since I'm still unmuted, I'll give a plug. Mark Obranch from Swiss Tech Coatings, been Insights most of the last 10 or 12 years. And it's for those who haven't been there, it's an excellent event. I know there can be, in companies, there can be a little sticker shock when you do figure out your event, your hotel, and your airfare and everything, but it is well worth it. It's basically a 3-day event, and I think it's this year Sunday, Mondays, the extended education, and I think that's an excellent tool.
Yes.
We get together here and we talk about SQL for an hour or BAQ for an hour. The extended ed classes are 4 hours long, way more detailed than anything you can get. No offense to any presenter here, but when you have 4 hours to cover a topic, these are big topics in BAQs and admin councils and SSRS or SQL, I shouldn't say SSRS, but SQL tools. All the different topic REST services are some of those extended ed classes. Those are well worth the extra $250 or $300 for the half day that they are. They are well worth the investment. Those 4-hour classes are fantastic. So I would highly recommend those in addition to the 3-day seminars, the 1-on 2-hour seminars, the Hall Solutions, the Epicore people you get to meet face to face make it well worthwhile. So that's my plug for it.
Kind of like last year, Tim, are you still out there?
He said he had to go. Let me see if he's
Currently
already logged off.
Currently, I offended him.
Tim logged off.
People unmuted.
Darn, I was going to turn around and ask him because I remember last year there was kind of a fiasco. Hey, there's no laptops in the room, so you kind of bring your own and you connect to the Kinetic experience online from the room. Are they still going to be doing that again this year?
That's what the registration said when I registered this morning.
Okay. That I wanted to make sure because there was some confusion about that.
I will say last year that worked pretty well. I was skeptical, but it seemed to work pretty well.
There wasn't network for all that.
I was just thinking you can bring your phone and run Epicore on your phone. Epicore runs on a phone, a tablet, a laptop, doesn't matter. In the web-based version, you have access to all of them.
You gotta need a kind of a bigger screen for all that information, but
or magnifying glasses.
Yeah.
And Calvin, there's one more question
What do you
from
mean? I have
Serena.
to look at something? Yeah, I see that. The bank statement processing workbench, is it possible to partially clear a line posted as AP pay if the total amount did not clear in the same fiscal period? Doing a partial clearing, I'm not going to recommend, because how did you clear partial of a check? Then I would turn around and do it as a bank transaction or a bank fee. The first month, process half of it, and then turn around and process the other half. But I would really question why you're not clearing the whole transaction. Did a bank only process half of your payment when you paid it out in one period and then do it on the other? Did you unmute Serena by chance, Fred?
I just did, Serena, so.
Okay.
I'm actually going to jump in for her because she ran to the bathroom quick. But so the issue that we had, this is Leah, by the way, we're in the same company. The issue we had is that we had 2 invoices posted on one manual check, but each invoice cleared the bank in a separate month.
And they were on the same check.
And they were on the same check. A manual. This is a manual check.
I didn't think the bank could clear a partial check.
It's
The
a
legal
manual
document is the check. So even if it's manual, I would turn around and enter it as an AP miscellaneous and bank statement processing, clear the portion, but manually select the account that you're putting it off to. And then in the next month, clear the other half and do an adjustment to it. Because it's going to be 2 transactions, even though you only have 1 transaction in Epicore to handle. That's why I'm kind of questioning how the bank is clearing a check in 2 different periods. They're even clearing a partial check.
It's because it's a manual check. So we posted, we paid ACH online, and our AP person posted two invoices, which is really 2 separate payments on one manual check in Epicore. And that's how
it should have been done as 2 ACH.
As 2, right.
2 manual checks.
Yes. Which we know going forward, but to try to clear the bank statement for the 1 month, well, the 2 months, I guess, is where we're running into the issue.
I would turn around and clear the portion with an adjustment through AP, and then do the other month, but do the write-off for what you already adjusted. So if you have like an AP suspense, turn around in the first month, book it off to there, and then in the second month, take it back out of the suspense and then clear the whole check.
Okay, thank you.
Makes sense? Because there wouldn't be a way that you could do it. You'd have to do it as a miscellaneous transaction in the AP transactions.
Okay.
And Kyle had the suggestion to reverse payment entry and repost as 2 entries.
That would be the other. Reverse the payment, back it out, cancel it, or void the check and then recreate it as 2 transactions like it should have been, 1 in one period, 1 in the other.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, anyone? If not, like I said, if you could provide some feedback when that survey comes up, I'd appreciate it. It does help us get some direction for things. We like to do these so that they're what you're looking for. And if there's things we can improve, we appreciate it. The input's always appreciated. Otherwise, if there are no other questions, we'll kind of hang out for a little bit here. Thank you all for coming to the meeting, and we look forward to seeing you for the next one.